It's hoped that special drug courts will be nationwide within 5 years. 2 of them have just been set up in Auckland, based on a US model, which has been massively successful, treating addicted people who would normally go through criminal courts. But just because the system has worked in the States, does that mean it'll work here? Well, Justice Minister Judith Collins is with us now. Minister, thank you very much for coming in. First of all, how does this actually work initially? An offender comes to court and the court recommends they go to the drug court, or does the defence request it?
Well, basically, it's a decision that's made by a court on a recommendation, but obviously the defence might decide that their client might meet the criteria. The client's got to plead guilty. And has to be someone whose offending is primarily because of their drug or alcohol addiction. And they can't be very serious violent offenders, sexual offenders or arsonists.
So we're talking about your recidivist drink drivers and burglars who are stealing to feed their habit.
Exactly.
How can we identify the real genuine addict here? Because it seems as though it could be oh, I've got a drinking problem, therefore I can avoid jail here.
Well, that might be, someone might try that, but they're assessed by the medical professionals. I mean, this is a big amount of work that's gone on between Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Health, so it's a joint effort, and there's a lot of work that's gone into that. So anyone who's just coming along saying, oh, I'll just make out I'm doing something, they're going to be found out very quickly.
First time they fail a drug test?
Well, they may or may not be taken off the program, and it's going to be up to the judge. But obviously, addiction is a chronic illness, and often there's failures along the way and people come back onto the program. But, you know, a judge has to be in charge of it, and it's going to be the same judge every time. So
there is a possibility that people may be able to trip up along the way and still be given leniency.
I think we need to be realistic about this. These are people who have often had drug addictions for maybe 20 years, 30 years, and it's going to take some time, but they're going to have to be clean for basically half a year before they can graduate off the program, and it's 12 to 18 months. It's a long, intensive program, and people fail it. They come off, they come back into it, and but it is a chance for them to change their behaviours.
Long, intensive program with testing and with very specialised rehabilitation help, therefore very expensive. How cost-effective is this, looking at $10 million a year for just 100 people, maybe? Well,
it's actually $2 million of that $10 million is being spent specifically on this program. The other money's going on other parts of the drug and alcohol programs we've got. But in San Francisco, they say that for every dollar spent, it saves them $1.46. And I think that does make sense. But it's got to be for the right people, and it would be a waste if we just did it for everybody going through the system.
Of course. Have you looked at programmes like, we've done on this show a couple of interviews about a programme in Northland called, I think it's called Drive Sober, where they've got an extraordinary success rate where they've looked at about 300 offenders from 07 to 11, and they now have a reoffending rate of 6%. Have you looked at those sort of programmes already established here?
There are already programs that are working here. This is in addition to those, and this is really about people who have been burglars, you say repeat drink drivers, but people who have been involved in, say, frauds and those sorts of offences where they might get up to 3 years jail. But some of the programs that are working around the country are working, but some of them are very specific to their area. So it's in addition to it, it's not instead of.
Addition, so it's not going to compromise funding for those programmes. At what stage can we say this is a success? What are your targets?
Well, we're looking at a 5-year pilot, and that's because it's very hard to say, to talk about the recidivism rates or reoffending rates until someone's been through the program and been out of the program for some years. But I think we're going to do very well on this. The official targets are anything up to 25%. I talked to one of the judges yesterday, Judge Aitken. She said she wants 60% reduction in reoffending, and I have to say, if she did that, I'd be very pleased.
Yes, you would be, as would all of us. So for 5 years, we're going to have 100 a year going through. It's not very many people really we're looking at here. Very much, it's not even the tip of the iceberg, given the size of the problem.
Yeah, and it's a problem that all the drug courts have, and it's because there are restrictions on whether or not the offenders are allowed to drive. There's all those sorts of things. So they need to have them living close to the court, close to the services available, and attending the court every 2 weeks, particularly in the first stages. So it's this is a Rolls-Royce treatment, but if it's very successful, as it has been overseas, it will continue to help us reduce offending. And you're already down, crime's right down now, and we want to get it further down.
You've talked about the Rolls-Royce treatment here, and even now you're saying that it's up to the courts to decide if somebody on the programme trips up and fails a drugs test or doesn't turn up for a session or something like that. You know, there's discretion to the judge. What about if they've been through the programme and then they're found back in the court system again later? Has that been thought out?
Well, that does happen now in the courts that operate overseas, and what tends to happen, as they say to me, is that sometimes those people get a harsher sentence because they've had these opportunities. Sometimes they might not. Sometimes they'll come back into the program. It's very dependent on what's actually right for that individual, but also they need to take into account the views of victims. They need to take into account, obviously, whether or not this person's just having them on or whether they genuinely want to change. And you can't change people unless they really want to change.
So it's very much a case-by-case basis.
It is.
All right, Judith Collins, Justice Minister, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Royden.